So, hello, we are starting on week 2 of our Bible study, week 2 of Glowing in Grace's 4-week Bible study from the book of I'm Waiting God by Barb Ruth, Finding Blessings in God Delays. So, week 1, we talked about Hannah in the Bible. So, our week 2 study it's coming from the book of Ruth. Ruth is a very short book, and we're actually going to be talking about Ruth. Ruth is a woman of the Bible that we hear about in the book of Ruth. And the book of Ruth not only talks about Ruth, but it highlights Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi, and her sister-in-law, where her husband's brother wife, Oprah. And we see in the book of Ruth that Ruth was married, where she is a widow after her husband's died. After her husband died, Naomi, her mother-in-law, her husband died. So Naomi husband died, Ruth husband died, and her brother died. So it was three widows, Naomi and her two daughters-in-law. So after their husbands died, Naomi was like, y'all can go back to your hometown. You can go back to your family. There's no need for y'all to be with me and no sense in y'all coming with me. I'm going to go on back to my hometown in Bethlehem. Y'all, stay here in your hometown in Moab. And according to the Bible, Moab was a country. They described it as a wasteful country. It was an idol worshiping country. So in the beginning, Ruth's husband was forbidden to even go to Moab, with his wife. But he went to Moab with his wife and his sons, and they met. Ruth and his other son met, another woman, Oprah, in Moab. So they married these two Moabite ladies. And again, Moab was considered to be an idol worshiping country. So they went to Moab, and they eventually ended up dying. Ruth husband died, Naomi husband died, and Naomi other son died. So her husband and her two sons died. So it was just left her and her two daughters-in-law. So after they died, Naomi said, y'all go back to your families. Y'all stay here. I'm going to go back home to Bethlehem where my family is. Oprah, she went on, she went on back to her family. She stayed where she was. But Ruth, her loyalty, she honored her mother-in-law and she said, no, I'm going with you. Wherever you go, I'm going. Your God is going to be my God. So Ruth did not want to separate from her mother-in-law Naomi. So Ruth and Naomi ended up going back to Bethlehem. And we see here in the book of Ruth that we deal with two different attitudes, two different responses to the deaths of their husband. We see with Naomi responded to the death, the situation with bitterness and pain, but we see Ruth, she responded a little different. Ruth responded with faithfulness to God, even though she lost her husband, even though she lost, her father-in-law, it was just her left with her mother-in-law. She responded to God. She still worshiped God. She was still faithful to God. She still worshiped her. She still, loved her mother-in-law, despite the loss of her husband. So, all three of them were widows. Ruth was widowed. Naomi was widowed, but Naomi responded a little different than how Ruth responded. And Naomi, she was bitter. She was mad. She was angry. First of all, she was ashamed to go back to her hometown because, she had no husband. She had no sons. When she left, she had a husband and a son. She come back, and her husband and her sons are no longer with her. So first of all, she's ashamed. She's mad with God. She's bitter. She's angry that she's blaming God for the situation that she's in. But we see that Ruth responds a little different. And I like to teach and talk about bitterness and unforgiveness, because so many people struggle in this area. So many people struggle with bitterness and unforgiveness, and they get mad with God. They think God is the reason. God allows suffering. God allows things to come in our life to disrupt our life. God allows unexpected tragedy. We see here that Ruth and Naomi was dealing with an unexpected tragedy. I like to kind of name this week's Bible study an unexpected journey, because you may be going through an unexpected loss in your life, an unexpected job loss, unexpected medical diagnosis, unexpected tragedy, unexpected financial situation, and you may be dealing with that today, and we see two different ladies deal with the same situation, the same tragedy. They responded differently. And I like to talk about bitterness and unforgiveness so much because I see so many people that struggle with bitterness and unforgiveness. They're mad with the world, they're mad with God, but we can't change the way how God allows things to happen, because he sometimes he has to allow tragedy to happen in our lives sometimes. And not saying this was the case in Ruth and Naomi's situation, but sometimes God has to allow things in our lives, unexpected loss in our lives, unexpected tragedies in our lives to happen, sometimes to get our attention because of sin in the earth, because of sin in the world. There is sin in the world, and God said, sin, the wages of sin is death. The wages of sin is death. So when there's sin out in the world, you know, death is going to happen. Death is going to happen because of the sin. So we see here, two different women, same situation, and they respond totally different. So day one of the Bible study, that's kind of the gist of week two. I didn't go through the whole week two lesson, but I kind of went through the first 2 days of it, and we kind of learned about Naomi and Ruth, how they didn't separate. They went on to Bethlehem, and we'll see in the next two lessons of week two where Ruth is working in Boaz's field, and Boaz recognized her, and the rest is history from there. But we know the story of Ruth and Boaz, but Ruth is much more than the wife, of Boaz. Ruth is a woman of God. Ruth is, a woman of virtue, a woman of patience, a woman of excellence. So Ruth is all these things. When we talk about the Proverbs 31 woman, Ruth has those attributes. Ruth has that virtue of the Proverbs 31 woman. So when we think about Ruth, we think about her strength. We think about her faithfulness. She was a faithful servant, how she honored God, how she honored her mother-in-law, how she dealt with tragedy, how she dealt with unexpected loss. We all go through unexpected tragedies, unexpected situations in our lives. And one situation may not be as great as something else, but what's a tragedy to you may not be a tragedy to somebody else. But we all go through situations in our lives that just hit us and just knock us off of our feet. Life is just going as we intended to go, and then boom, something happened, an unexpected situation comes up in our lives, and it just knocks us off. And sometimes it just changed our whole world, and everything have to be readjusted. Our whole world have to be readjusted. So in the case of Ruth and Naomi, they lost their husbands. They lost their husbands, and they had to really just start over. Their lives were forever changed. They had to start over, move, pack up and move back to Naomi's homeland. So that's what we see here. Ruth is a very good book to read. I've always admired Ruth, for her faithfulness, her servant's heart. How she honored her mother-in-law even after the death of her husband. She still honored her mother-in-law. She honored God, because a lot of times when unexpected tragedies, unexpected situations such as divorce or the loss of a loved one, medical diagnosis, it's hard to still worship. It's hard to still, bless the name of God when we are going through situations like this. So, Ruth has always been one of my favorite persons in the Bible because of her strength, because of her faithfulness, because she continued to serve God. She continued to honor God, even though, she had to deal with the loss of her husband. So yeah, Ruth is who we're talking about in week two of our Bible study. So wanted to come on and share with you to kind of give you the layout of our week two. But we are going to meet at Panera Bread in Baton Rouge on Jefferson Highway this Saturday at 3 o'clock p.m. We had a great time for our first week Bible study at Barnes & Noble. We talked about Hannah, and it was a great great time. So I'm looking forward to seeing you joining us this Saturday for our second week 2 of our Bible study, of our 4-week Bible study. And we have 2 more weeks left. I haven't determined the location for week 3 and week 4 yet, but week 2, we are meeting this Saturday at Panera Bread on Jefferson Highway, and we will be discussing the book of Ruth. So I will talk with y'all later. I hope that you will be able to join us on this Bible study. Y'all take care and you be blessed. Bye-bye.